Hello, welcome to part 2 of the discussion video on Module 2. So, kanina ay nag-stop tayo doon sa discussion on the bank overdraft. So, we measure the cash before, yung cash fund ay na-discuss na din. Then, dito tayo ngayon sa bank overdraft. So, bank overdraft is the case when an entity issue check in excess of the deposit and results for the bank account to have a credit balance. So ano ang sinasabi related to overdraft? So kung mapapansin mo, ang discussion natin kanina ay doon sa pag-maintain ng cash on hand, cash fund, and cash in bank. So kapag ikaw ay mayroong cash in bank, meron kang, for example, ang current account or checking account, ikaw ay may account sa bank with checks, with checkbook. So, ang sinasabi sa bank overdraft ay nag-issue ka ng cheque in excess of the deposit. So, for example, 100,000 ang laman ng iyong current account, ang inisyu mong cheque ay 105,000, therefore, magre-result yun sa overdraft. So, as the term imply, overdraft, sobra yung amount doon sa cheque compared doon sa amount ng bank account mo. So, it results for the bank account to have a credit balance. So, ang sinasabing credit balance dito ay doon sa iyong financial statement. Ang normal balance ng iyong cash in bank ay debit because it is an asset account. So, dahil mas malaki yung issuance ng check compared doon sa iyong balance, ay magkakaroon yun ng credit balance. So, therefore, negative ang iyong cash in bank account. It is classified as a current liability and should not be offset within other bank accounts with debit balances in other financial entity. Because a negative cash balance will result to being classified as a liability. Magkakaroon ka ng utang doon sa bank dahil sobra yung in-cash compared doon sa balance mo lamang. It should not be offset within other bank accounts with debit balances in other financial entity, except when an entity maintains two bank accounts in one bank. It can also be offset with other bank account if the amount is immaterial. So, ang sinasabi lang dito ay, nagkakaroon ng overdraft kapag yung issuance ng check ay sobra compared doon sa iyong bank balance. But the question is overdraft allowed in the Philippines? It is not. Bank overdraft is not permitted in the Philippines, and it will normally lead to issuance of a bouncing check. So bakit hindi pinipermit o inaalaw ang overdraft dito sa Pilipinas? Because it will result to the issuance of bouncing check. Ang mangyayari kasi dyan ay, kung i-allow natin na mag-draw ng check, ang bawat isang depositor ay magbabounce yung mga cheque. Ibig sabihin ay matatransfer yung liability. Kung dati may utang ka doon sa isang supplier, inisyon mo siya ng cheque, nakuha niya yung pera sa bank, ngayon naman, eventually, magkakaroon ka naman ng utang kay bank because of the overdraft. So, yun yung piniprevent. Kaya, because of the passage of the Batas Pambansa 22 o yung BP 22 na tinatawag, yung bouncing check law, ay pinohibit ang mga ganitong klaseng issuance, yung mga overdraft, yung scenario ng bank overdraft. So, this is not permitted in the Philippines. This is discussed for academic purposes only because some other countries are still allowing the scenario or the scenario of having a bank overdraft. Okay. Yung konsepto kasi ng bouncing check ay paano ba nagba-bounce o tumatalbog yung cheque? Naririnig mo siguro yung term na tumatalbog yung cheque. It depends on the situation kung paano nag-bounce yung check. Kapag kasi bounce check, ibig sabihin nag-issue ka ng cheque pero hindi siya in-honor ng bank. It was returned to you. So normally, kapag ni-return yan doon sa pinagbayaran mo, ay ibabalik sa iyo yan ng payee para palitan mo ng another check. So, bakit nagba-bounce yung mga check? One is, it was drawn against insufficient fund, yung DAIF na tinatawag. Pwede kasi na ang laman lang ng bank account mo ay 200,000 pero ang initial mong check ay 205,000, magba-bounce yung entire check. Yung buong check na yun ay hindi i-honor ng bank because kulang yung iyong bank account. That is drawn against insufficient fund. Second is, it was drawn against uncleared deposit. Pwede kasi na merong deposit through check na ginawa ka doon sa iyong bank account, pero hindi pa siya available for encashment or withdrawal. So, hindi pa, meron kang dineposit doon through check, pero hindi pa siya available for withdrawal. So, hindi rin siya pwedeng gamitin para sa pag-i-encash ng mga cheque. So, kanina, DAIF, DAUD, yung drawn against uncleared deposit, pwede ring drawn against accounts closed. Ano ibig sabihin nun? Pwedeng nag-draw ka ng cheque pero close na pala yung account mo. So, yun yung reasons kung bakit nagbabounce yung check. Yung tatlo na yun. DAIF, DAUD, and drawn against account close or closed accounts. So now let's go with compensating balance. Ito yung tinutukoy ko kanina when we are discussing the cash in bank. So a compensating balance is a minimum checking or deposit account balance. So ito yung maintaining balance na usually ay ginagamit yung term na maintaining balance. So maintaining balance is the amount which is agreed by the business entity and the bank. So, let's try this. For example, nag-open ka ng iyong ATM or yung savings account mo, di ba? Normally, for example, sa Land Bank, meron yung 500 peso na minimum or maintaining balance. Na once na na-withdraw yung maintaining balance na yun, ay mako-close yung iyong bank account. So let's take this simple example. An entity borrows 1 million from a bank. So nangutang ka kay bangko ng 1 million. However, si bank, ang sabi niya, dapat mag-create ka ng there should be a 5% compensating balance in a demand deposit. So bago ka nila pautangin ng 1 million ay merong i-deduct daw na 5% doon sa inutang mo to be created as a demand deposit. So magkikreate ng isang account for you as a portion of the loan. So the agreement results in the 5% reduction on the amount borrowed and provide source of fund to the bank as partial compensation for the loan. So what is the purpose of this compensating balance? First, in this scenario, yung 5% compensating balance serves as a partial security on the loan. In case of default, ay pwedeng yung compensating balance ay maging payment for the loan. So yan is one of the security on a loan. So let's now classify the compensating balance. Compensating balance is part of the cash if the deposit is not legally restricted because of the informal compensating balance agreement. Okay, anong sinasabi dito? Normally, kapag yung mga bank accounts natin ay meron niyang mga maintaining balances. So, ang sinasabi dito ng standard ay if the compensating balance or the maintaining balance is not legally restricted, it can be considered or classified as cash. Ano ibig sabihin ng legally restricted? Normally, merong agreement between the business entity and the bank na ito yung compensating balance agreement. Pwede kasi na yaan ay may garnish, pwedeng yaan ay ma-freeze eventually. So kung walang mga legal restrictions related to the compensating balance, ay pwede yan i-classify as cash. Okay, basahin pa natin. And should be classified separately as cash held as compensating balance under current asset if the related loan is short term. If the deposit is legally restricted because of the formal compensating balance, it is classified as non-current if the loan is long-term. So, anong sinasabi dito? Ang sinasabi lang dyan sa compensating balance na yan ay kung walang legal restriction, yung binanggit ko kanina, kung walang legal restriction, it can be considered as cash. However, Papaano kapag yung compensating balance ay with legal restriction, at yung loan na sinisecure niya ay short term, it is considered as cash held as compensating balance. So, magkakaroon ng panibagong account title. Hindi na siya cash, but it is a cash held as compensating balance. Yun yung mismong account title. Cash held as compensating balance. Kapag merong legal restriction sa doon sa doon sa compensating balance na yon, provided that it is a security or a partial security on a short-term loan. Paano naman kapag meron siyang if the deposit is legally restricted because of the formal compensating balance agreement and the loan is long-term, it will be classified as a non-current investment. Kaya ang sabi dyan, classified as non-current if the loan is long-term. So, i-summarize lang natin, kapag wala siyang legal restriction because of the informal yung compensating balance agreement between the entity and the bank, yun ay can be classified as cash. Pero kung yun naman ay mayroong legal restriction because of a formal compensating balance agreement, tapos ang sinisecure partially noon ay isang short-term loan, yung short-term loan ay less than 12 months, it can be considered as another account title, cash held as compensating balance. Paano naman kapag ang sinisecure niya ay non-current, uh, sinisecure niya ay isang long-term loan, it can be classified as a non-current investment. Okay, let's go with the undelivered or unreleased check. So as the term imply, anong ibig sabihin nito? Yung check, medyo familiar ka na dyan. Undelivered check is checks merely drawn or recorded but not given to the payee before the reporting period ends. So nag-draw ka ng check, nag-prepare ka ng check ngayon, na i-record na rin yan. Paano ni-record ang cheque? You debit the expense account and then you credit cash. Pero yung cheque na yun ay hindi na i-deliver or hindi na ibigay dun sa supplier or outside parties na o nung payee, hindi na ibigay dun sa payee before the reporting period ends. Na-draw mo na siya at na-record na siya. Ano ang sinasabi ng standard dito? Paano i-measure ito? Since this is undelivered, there is no actual payment made. So, dahil nasa sa custody mo pa, yung control doon sa cash ay nasa sayo pa rin dahil hindi mo yan na-deliver. So, paano ang gagawin mo? Kailangan mo lang i-restore yung iyong cash balance. So, originally, nung ni-record mo yung check, you debit, for example, ang expense account ay office supplies expense. When you draw a check para doon pambayad sa office supplies na binili mo, ay you debit the office supplies expense and then you credit cash. But because it is undelivered or it is unreleased, you need to restore the cash account para hindi ma-understate yung cash balance. So, what is the entry? Ang sabi dyan, you debit cash and then you credit the accounts payable or vouchers payable or any appropriate liability account. So, para lang ma-reflect. So, ibig sabihin, utang pa siya. Hindi pa siya nababayaran. So, let's go with the post-dated check. Yung post-dated check is a check drawn, recorded, and already given to the payee but bears a date subsequent at the end of the reporting period. Anong ibig sabihin naman ito? Halimbawa, magdodraw ako ng check ngayon, magpe-prepare ako ng check ngayon, today is October 8. Dahil wala pa akong pera ngayon, nakausap ko yung supplier na ang cheque ko will be dated November 8. So, ito-draw ko yun ngayon, November 8. It is now also recorded and already given to the payee but bears a date subsequent. So, na-draw ko yun ngayon, naibigay ko na rin yun sa supplier or dun sa outside party, dun sa payee, naibigay ko na siya. However, kahit na yon ay nandoon pa sa supplier, ay hindi niya pa yun pwedeng i-encash or i-deposit sa kanyang account dahil yun ay post-dated. Sa November 8 onwards niya pa yun pwedeng i-deposit or i-encash. However, when you record it, you record office supplies expense and then you credit cash, for example. So, magiging understated yun kung ang end ng reporting period ay ngayon, papaano ang gagawin mo dyan to restore the normal cash balance. So, same procedure. You restore by debiting cash, and then you credit accounts payable or any appropriate liability account. So, yun ang treatment sa for post-dated checks. Let's go with stale check. Ano tong mga stale check? Katulad kanina, yung post-dated check na ibigay mo na doon sa client. Ang sinasabing stale check ay, na-draw ko na yung checking ngayon, naibigay ko na doon sa outside supplier, pero si supplier ay hindi niya yun in-encash or dineposit within a relative long period of time. So, in practice, ang relative long period of time na tinutukoy ay 6 months. So, for example, meron kang cheque ngayon na ang date ay January 1, 2020, stale na yan ngayon dahil ngayon ay October 8, 2020 na. So, lagpas na siya doon sa 6 months. So, anong mangyayari kapag stale check? Kahit idala mo pa yan sa bank, hindi mo yan pwedeng i-encash or i-deposit. So, yun yung concept ng stale check. In the government, meron silang tinatawag na modified disbursement system checks. So, iba ito doon sa normal na commercial checks. Yung modified disbursement system checks, yung mga MDS checks, ay ang validity lang doon ay 3 months. So, within 3 months, dapat ay ma-encash or ma-deposit na yung mga MDS checks na yun. In banking practice, 6 months. Otherwise, yung sa commercial checks ay 6 months. So, what happens? How do we record a stale check? So, sabi dyan, a check should be considered a stale check if it's not in cash within 6 months. If the amount of the stale is immaterial, the amount is simply considered as miscellaneous income. So, before we proceed with the NT, paano ba ang procedure? Halimbawa, nagkaroon ka ng stale check. Ang hawak mo ay stale check. All you have to do is go to the issuer of the check, kung sino yung nagbigay sa'yo ng check, at papalitan mo. You need a replacement for the check. So, pag pinalitan niya, o they surrender mo yung dating cheque, then kuhanin mo yung bago, then another 6 months uli. Provided na yung date, doon magsisimula sa check date yung validity ng cheque. So now, paano daw kapag yung in accounting practice, if the amount of the stale check is immaterial, we just simply restore by debiting cash and then crediting miscellaneous income. Ang ibig sabihin nito, kapag immaterial ang cheque, ang amount ng cheque ay hindi mo na yan dapat palitan because the fault rests or lies on the payee dahil hindi niya nga in-encash or dineposit yung cheque niya. However, kapag yung amount naman ay material, the liability is expected to continue. So, you restore your cash, you debit cash, and then you credit your accounts payable or any appropriate liability account. So, may liability ka pa rin dyan. So, pwede siyang manghingi ng replacement check if it is material. So, be mindful that materiality depends on the nature of the business, the size of the business. So, for example, yung 1,000 peso may be immaterial to San Miguel Corporation. However, it may be material to a small grocery store. So, normally kapag merong mga ganyang may encounter sa problems, it will be provided whether it is material or immaterial to the business. Okay, let's go with accounting for cash shortage. Alam naman na natin what a cash shortage is. So, if the cash count, halimbawa, binilang yung iyong cash on hand, when it is less than the balance per book, you have a shortage. So, how do you account for cash shortage? You debit cash short or over and then you credit cash. For example, 5,000 ang nasa iyong sa cash item mo, sa iyong financial statement, 5,000, pero nung binilang 4,500 lang, so short ka ng 500. So, you need to adjust your cash account by crediting. So, babawasan mo ang yung cash account Then, gagamit ka ng cash short or over. Cash short or over is just a temporary account. So, paano ang treatment sa cash short or over? So, may note dito, if the cashier is held responsible for the cash shortage, you need to set up the receivable due from cashier. Dahil sa kanya, yung responsibility on the cash shortage, debit due from cashier, and then you credit cash short or over for 500 pesos, for example. Yung due from cashier is a receivable account. So, receivable mo kay cashier. Si cashier ay magbabayad sa iyo in the future. So, pwedeng salary deduction or other modes. However, if the costs of the shortage cannot be found, the entry is in practice, hindi this rare happens kasi normally kapag may shortage, merong responsible for doon. Normally lagi yung cashier. Hindi pwedeng hindi cannot be found. For discussion, for example, dito nangyari, uh, you debit the loss, you credit the cash short or over. Kumbaga, i-treat na as loss na yon ng company. Okay, now let's go with the Impress system. Ano ba itong Impress system? Impress system is a kind of system to control cash which requires that all cash receipts should be deposited intact and all of the cash disbursements should be made by means of check. However, paying by means of check is not always possible. So anong sinasabi under the Impress system? Ang sinasabi lang dito, dapat yung system natin ay lahat ng tinatanggap nating cash ay deposited intact. Deposited intact, ibig sabihin, this is accounted for daily. Yung lahat naman daw ng disbursement o yung mga palabas ay dapat through checks. Pero meron yung mga cases kasi involving small payments, kaya dito napapasok yung yung petty cash fund. So, I will be ending this video. On the third part ay itatatapusin na natin itong cash and cash equivalents starting to petty cash fund. Sige, yun muna. Thank you.